Right, hello and welcome guys to this tutorial video. And in this tutorial video, we will be performing two attacks or web application attacks. One of them will be an SQL injection, and then the other one will be an arbitrary file upload through WebDAV. So I've got two machines running. So I've got my Kali Linux and also my Metasploitable machine on the Aponto platform. So let's get into this. So I'll log into my Kali. The first thing I want to do is just find out my IP address, and then I'll do a quick net discover to identify the IP address of the um, Metasploitable. So this is the IP address of my Kali, that's fine. And then run a quick net discover on that network address. I'll open a different tab. And there I would perform a quick nmap on the IP address once it's found. Okay, so that appears to be the IP address of my Metasploitable 122.117. So I'll go ahead and just perform a quick nmap SV scan on that IP address. Um, okay, right. So from the results, we can see that there is an HTTP service running on port 80, and that's the one we want to visit. So open up a web browser and go to the IP address of the Metasploitable machine on my web browser. So again, it's 192.117. Okay, so that should go to a port 80 instead. Okay, so the application we are going after for the SQL injection is this payroll app. So once you're here, you want to click on this payroll app, and these appear to be vulnerable to SQL injection. So I'll show you a different way to perform SQL injection using SQL map and Bob Suite. So the first thing we want to do is to configure our Bob Suite proxy. So I'll go on to settings on my Firefox. Okay. And here I'll just click on settings and security. Or what you want to do is just search in the Homes tab, search for network. So we'll go to network settings, click on the settings, and I'll go on to my manual proxy configuration and type in the local host, which is 127.0.0.1. So this is the same thing you'll be doing on yours, and then the port will be 8080. This is the default local host address that Bob Suite uses to intercept network traffic. So I'm going to close this and just click on OK. Then on my Kali machine, I'll go on and search for Bob Suite. So just type in Bob and we get Bob Suite running. Now what we want to do is use Bob Suite to intercept the traffic once we put in a username and password. So I'll let Bob Suite start up first and show you how you can do this. So SQL injection not only affects parameters like parameters in the URL, or parameters that might point or reference specific items. It can also be, you can also have where users supply inputs, especially in username and password fields, for instance, on a login page like this. So what you want to do is to also test for an SQL injection in this type of scenario. Click on accept. And as you have my Bob Suite interface, just click on next, then start up Bob Suite Community Edition. Okay, let's close that. And right, so what I want to go is to go to the proxy tab, and we're going to make sure that we've got intercept off. If you go to your proxy settings, this is where I mentioned that this is the default. Can you see the address that the proxy is using? And that's why we need to use the same address within the Firefox browse network settings. Okay, so that's where we got this address from, if you're wondering why we're using that address. So I'm going to close these settings and then I'll go to proxy. Now, before I turn intercept on, I'm going to go to the web page and just put in a dummy username and password. So I'm just going to put username as Alex and the password as password. Okay. And before I click on OK, what you want to do is to go and intercept on. So intercept is on. Go in here to burp to your web browser and just click on OK. And you can see now that burp has intercepted that request. So you can see the username and the password field saying OK. So what you want to do next is to right click and save or copy to file. Okay, so click on copy to file and choose where you want this to be. So I'm going to go to my tools directory, double click on my tools directory, and in my tools directory I would call this let's call this payroll. Okay, payroll.req.request. Okay, so this is going to save that into a text file in my tools directory. So I'm just going to click on save. I'll just forward this, send this to repeater, and I can turn intercept back off. So now we have that in the tools directory. So I'm going to go to my command line interface and cd into my tools directory. Okay, and in here, I should have the payroll request. Let's have a look at what is inside this request. So payroll request. And you can see this is the request that we captured with the username and password parameters. So this is what we are going to use for SQL injection. So the next thing you want to do is to run SQL map. So I'm going to do SQL map -r. All right, you want to use the R flag, which is for requests, and then specify the file payroll .request. Okay, so let me just write that again. So SQL map -r payroll.request, and then you just run the normal parameters. So we want to investigate what database is running and also use the batch command. And I'll click on enter. As you can see from the results, it says test shows that the post parameter user might not be injectable. Okay, but if we have a look at the results carefully, we would see that the password, the user appears to be, the user parameter appears to be SQL. So the user parameter, I believe, is what is injectable. So just clicking on this, you can see that the user parameter test shows is not, but at some point it says the post user appears to be SQL injectable, time-based SQL injectable. So the user parameter is what is vulnerable, and you can see by that it's giving us the databases. So we've been able to use SQL map to determine the database for that specific stuff. So payroll is the database you want to go for. So again, I'm going to run this and then use the -d parameter, select payroll database. And in here, I'm going to ask for the tables and then run batch. Click on enter. And we only have one table, which is the user. So that's the table we're going to dump. And we can do a -t users and --dump. And again, we run the batch command or the batch parameter. And you can see now we have successfully dumped the users table in the payroll database. And we can see salary, password, user, first name and last name. So the database here does not hash or any of the passwords. It's just storing them in plain text. So that is a quick way that you can also use SQL map by capturing a request and using that request within SQL map. Okay, you capture the request within Verb Suite, and then you can then use SQL map to test for those parameters, which in this case shows that the username user field is what is vulnerable on the login page that the login page for that specific app. Okay, so make sure you try this yourself and you're able to make this work for you. So next thing I'm going to go is I'm going to go back to my settings and just put my proxy to no proxy because we are done using Bob Suite for this. So the next thing I want to do is to perform a WebDAV exploitation. So the first thing I want to do is to do a copy. I'll copy this URL and I will just run a quick, we can do deb. Okay, you can do deb on that IP address. So we will brute force the directories, and upon brute forcing the directories, there's a directory that we want to go for, which is the uploads directory. Okay, so I can end this brute force and we'll just copy this URL, open link. So this URL is the uploads directly on the same Metasploitable IP address. So we have this uploads. So this is what we're going to test for using a tool called Nicto. So I'll copy this, go on here. I'll use this tool called Nicto. Okay. And when I just click Nicto enter, it will tell me exactly how to use this tool. So in order to use Nicto, we have to use some specific flags for Nicto. So I'm just going to scroll back to the top. So let's clear this page. Let's do Nicto -help. See if we have the help page. And on the help page, you should tell us how to use this tool. For some reason, my window just keeps scrolling. So I think we need to use the -host flag to run Nicto against that URL. So you can see here, the syntax is -host, and then you put the target URL. I think that is all we need in this sort of scenario. So let's clear our screen and then use Nicto -host, and we'll paste the IP address, including the oops, the IP address HTTP 192.168.122.17.17/uploads. Right, and then we run this. So Nictel would then perform a vulnerability scan, and from the results, we will see that some dangerous HTTP methods are enabled based on WebDAV. So you can see here, it says, let's have a look at the results. Indexing, there's no indexing. Tells us it's running some sort of Apache. And when we have a look, it tells us that the HTTP methods delete. So these are the HTTP methods that are allowed. Get, head, post, options, delete, copy, move, and stuff. So you can see that these dangerous methods such as delete um, is enabled on that HTTP server, and also move may allow clients to change files, locations on the server. So you can see that these dangerous parameters are enabled. So we can arbitrarily upload a file to that server and then execute it. Okay, we definitely know that this application supports PHP because from our previous example, when we had a look at the applications, okay, we can see that it does, PHP is supported on this specific website or this web server. So therefore, we might then be able to put a file in the uploads directory. Let's go back in the uploads directory and execute that. So we can put a web shell, a PHP web shell. Okay, so let's see how we can do that. So now that we know that it's enabled, what we can do is to use a tool called Cadaver. So I'm going to say Cadaver and provide the URL. Okay, so let's put in the URL. Okay, so normally an HTTP website might be protected using, HTTP basic authentication, but in this scenario, it is not. So if I do like a question mark, I can see the commands that I can use to copy a file, move a file, delete a file on this specific web server. So we are logged into this web server, and we can see we can run command line list. There's nothing in the uploads directory. So we can use these commands to do whatever we want. So the command we're going to be using is the put command, which we can use to put a file on this specific web server. Okay, so we're going to use the put command. So if we look at our directory, we are in the tools directory. That is our current working directory on this Linux environment. So I'm going to go to my tools and I'm going to locate web shell. Just going to do web shell. I want to find a PHP web shell that we can use. So in this directory here on your Kali Linux machine is where you can find PHP web shells. So I'll copy this selection, open up another tab and move into that directory. So change directory, paste clipboard, and go into this directory, do a list. And here we can find a PHP reverse shell that we can use. So I'm going to copy this PHP reverse shell, PHP dash reverse. Okay. Dash shell dot PHP. And I'm going to put it into my root.tools. And I'm going to call this, let's just call it reverse dash shell dot PHP. So I'm just grabbing a copy of this PHP reverse shell and putting it into my tools directory because that's where I want to fetch it from. So I click on enter, and if I go into my tools directory, I should have a copy So let's clear screen. So present working directory, you can see I'm in my tools directory. And if I do a list, I have the reverse shell. This is the file that I just copied. So I'm going to open up this file and make just one change to this file, which is when you scroll down, there is somewhere where you can change the IP address to the IP address of your Kali Linux machine. So here where we have IP, I'll put in the IP address of my Kali Linux. So you do this for your own machine, 192.168.122.241. That is the IP address of my Kali. You can change the port number if you want. So again, in this one, I'll just do it to be, let's say, 9002. All right, you can leave it at 1234, but I just want to change this because it says change this. So we'll save this file. Okay, so this file is saved. Now, remember, we are already logged in and I'm in this tools directory. So what I'll do is I'll use the put command and then the name of the file, which is reverse shell.php, reverse-shell.php, and I'll just call it the same thing. So space reverse. So what is the name I want it to be called when it's uploaded to the WebDAV server? Okay, PHP, and I'll click on enter. And you can see the upload are successfully completed. So if I then go back in here and I refresh this page, we can see we got the reverse shell PHP. So we've managed to upload this reverse shell. So in order to get a shell, what I need to do next, minimize this window. It's possible to minimize. Let's close this. Trying to see if I can minimize this window for you to see it properly. But what I'll do is I'll go onto my machine and open up a net class listener. Let's clear screen to make it tidy. NVLP. I remember 9002. Is it 9002 or 9001? Let's verify. When we made the change, what was the port? 9002. Okay. So 9002 is the port we're going to be listening on to obtain our reverse shell. So when I go in here and I click on reverse shell, you see something appears to be happening, and go here, we do have a shell. Okay, we have a shell. So if I do bash interactive, I have a shell as www.data on Metasploitable. So in a nutshell, what was this tutorial set up to do? We conduct an SQL injection in a different way where you can use a request captured through Bob Suite to perform SQL injection. And we also perform an arbitrary file upload to a WebDAV vulnerable location on the Metasploitable where you can upload a PHP reverse shell to obtain a shell. So by uploading a PHP shell, reverse shell and getting a shell on the box. So I hope this tutorial is helpful. And if you have any questions, let me know. All right, take care, guys.